Welcome, brave souls, to the chilling depths of horror in detail. Today we are going to share scary college and university's horror stories. First story. There's something wrong with my college roommate. Last fall I started college. I hated it. The classes were hard. The people were cold. I had a hard time making friends. And then there was Addison. Addison was my roommate. We were randomly assigned by computer, and it couldn't have been more obvious. We had nothing in common. I was a nerdy, self-conscious, tall girl that frequented the computer labs. She was a blonde, petite softball player that spent her Saturday nights partying and her Sunday mornings in church. She was friendly enough when we both happened to be in the room at the same time. She'd say hello. Sometimes she'd borrow my shampoo, without asking, of course. Sometimes I'd borrow one of her fancy schmancy granola bars in retaliation. Generally, things were okay, even though they weren't great. Until the night of October 19th. I got back late from an engineering class. As I felt the chill leave my cheeks in the warm hallway of our dorm, I heard a scream from our room. Addison. Then she yelled, "No, get out." I ran to the door, shoved my key into the lock. I thought I was about to stumble on an attempted rape. Addison didn't exactly hang with the best crowd, and she had a posse of frat guys that followed her like bees after honey. "Addison, are you okay?" She was alone, just lying there, crumpled on the bed, all by herself. When she heard me, she whipped around in surprise. "Oh, sorry, I must have fallen asleep," she said. She sat up and stretched. "Sorry, what were you saying?" "No, I heard you yelling. Are you okay?" "Yeah, I'm fine. Must have been talking in my sleep. Haven't done that since middle school." She let out a little giggle. Sleeping. My eyes fell on the bed, where her phone lay. It was mid-call with someone. I could see the little phone icon on the screen, see the numbers timing the length of the call. "You were on the phone with someone?" "No, I was asleep." I stared at her. "I'm okay." I decided not to press it. Maybe it's just a fight with a hometown boyfriend or something. Or her parents. But then why did she say get out? No one was in the room with her. The next week went by without anything too exciting. My classes got a bit harder, and I spent more and more time over at the engineering school. Every night, by the time I got back to the dorm, Addison was already asleep. I could hear her light snores coming from across the room, see her cross necklace dangling from the jewelry hook on her dresser. On Friday night, I got home a little earlier than usual. I didn't have a problem set due until Tuesday, so I figured I'd relax a bit. As I walked down the hallway, it was dead silent. The light flickered overhead, and I felt a chill course through my body. I've never seen the building this empty. I immediately shook my head, trying to extinguish the thought. There's nothing wrong with a dorm being empty on a Friday evening. People go into town, hang out with their friends. Some even take trains into the city for the weekend. The light flickered again. And besides, there probably are people here. They're just sleeping or on the computer or something. My footsteps softly thumped across the carpet. The gold 21 screwed to our door came into view. I pulled out my keys with a jingle and put them into the lock. I twisted the doorknob. The room was dark. Addison out partying. As usual, I thought to myself with an eye roll. I set my backpack down against my dresser, unhooked my bra, and climbed into bed. I pulled out my phone, scrolled through Reddit, sent off a text to my mom. The silence remained. The minutes ticked by, and I realized I hadn't heard a single sound in almost 20 minutes. My heart began to pound. A prickly, uncomfortable sensation crept up my arms, up my neck. Something is wrong. Something is very, very wrong. I looked up from the phone. The dim glow of the screen lit up the room in a soft glow. The shadows were black and blurred, but as my eyes adjusted to the dark, they came into view. There was something on Addison's bed, something long, stretching up to the ceiling. I squinted in the darkness. It was Addison, standing on the bed, her head almost touching the ceiling, staring down at me. I yelped and jumped back. "Addison, what are you doing up there?" I shrieked. "You nearly gave me a heart attack." She opened her mouth. It seemed to stretch wider than ever before, in a sunken O shape that was blacker than the shadows around her. I already got the others. I ran out of the room, down the hallway. I could hear the thump, thump, thump of footsteps pounding behind me. I raced down the stairs. The lights flickered. I swung open the door. Then I collapsed, gasping in the cold, crisp air. They found the bodies the next day. 17 people total. All of them found dead in their rooms. Cause of death: asphyxiation, even though none of them were hanging from ropes or showed any signs of being strangled. Addison, herself, was found dead in our dorm room, splayed out across her bed, the cross hanging from her neck upside down. Second story: how to survive college. No good choice. A lot has happened since I last posted. I've been reeling from it all and have been putting this update off. The situation with Maria and James wasn't something I could wait on, because Maria was somewhere, perhaps trapped as James had been trapped, and the thought of that was intolerable. I wanted to throw up just thinking of it, my stomach twisting into a painful knot that sent pain stabbing up into my chest. I couldn't live with this outcome. I couldn't. So I wrote the last post, just so I didn't forget anything, and then immediately went to find Grayson. He didn't answer my text message or my phone call, so I went to his house. Perhaps he was in class. If he was still bothering to go, I don't know. I haven't been keeping track of him because I've had my own problems, but if he wasn't answering his phone, then I was going to either find him or be there for when he got back. I pounded on the front door for a good minute before Grayson answered it. The sight of him made me pause, like a bucket of ice thrown upon my anger and fear. He looked bad. His skin had a gray cast, and the veins in his eyes were darkened, like the blood was slowing down and drying out. This was why he had been so exhausted all year, I realized. Not because he was graduating, but because this wasn't his body, and it was dying all around him, just like the president's body had. "Maria is gone," I said. "She fell into the water in the power plant basement," and something else came out. His eyes widened, and he sucked in a sharp breath. "You know something, don't you?" I demanded. "You have to. That's where you came from, isn't it? If it can put souls in other bodies, then it put you here in James's body." It was like now that I was going, I couldn't stop myself. "Did you know that I've been drinking from it? And that I can't remember doing it? What is this place doing to me? What did it do to Maria?" I was shouting at the last bit. Grayson raised his hands, and he was saying something, I don't know what, trying to calm me down before the neighbors noticed. I wasn't hearing his words anymore. "Yes, you're right," he finally snapped, shocking me into silence at last. "That is how I got here. I wanted a way out, and so when it was offered to me, I took it." "Who offered you a way out?" He laughed softly and stepped back, leaving the door wide open. An invitation to come inside. I hesitated. Would I even remember this conversation later? Knowing what Grayson was, could I trust him? "The first president," he said wryly. "He wanted to harness the inhuman. You've seen how that turned out for him. He was gone, long dead, a walking corpse, propped up by human souls being shoved inside that rotting bag of meat. Were you the reason the president was that way?" I asked, horrified. "I'm trapped by the status quo," he murmured, his gaze growing distant. I knew it was a cage, and I stepped into it anyway. And once I had a role, I had to keep it going. It was humanity that changed things. The inhuman preyed on us, but when we told stories, they had no choice but to play along. "There were others, of course," Grayson murmured. He had a bunch of them under his sway. They knew of my existence, and he promised them power and immortality if they helped him. That was very popular back then, using the occult for those things. Using us. Some of those families are still around, though I think the descendants weren't informed of what was done. "Here, come inside. I got some photos." Reluctantly, I stepped inside the doorway. He closed it gently behind me and led me through the house to the president's office. The house felt desolately empty, like it hadn't been lived in for a very long time. There were no lights on, and the office was lit only by the gray sunlight trickling in through the windows. Grayson rummaged through the file cabinets. He was breathing hard, like that short walk from the front door was enough to exhaust him. "Here," he said, handing me a photograph. I took it, and perhaps because I was getting the hang of how things worked around here, I wasn't surprised by what I saw. The president stood there, staring solemnly at the camera, flanked on either side by men of similar appearances and ages. And towards the right was one, his hair long gone, that looked vaguely like a certain professor who could bore the devil himself to tears in a lecture. I sighed and handed it back. "Let me guess," I said. They're still in positions of power around the university? Samar, I don't keep close track of them. They're not necessary anymore. The rumors of an immortal president among the staff has been enough to keep the cycle they started going. This isn't helping me save Maria, I said, sighing and handing it back. It's all I can give you, he replied quietly, putting the photo away again. I'm not in a state to help. I can't do anything right now. I couldn't do everything. I couldn't save everything. Yet I still had to ask. This was Grayson, and yes, he wasn't human, and yes, he had kept so many secrets from me, but at one point I cared for him. No, I still did, I think, and I felt like I had to try. So I asked him what I could do to help, perhaps after we saved Maria, and he said there was nothing. He just had to make it until the end of the year, he said. Is that when you steal another body? I blurted out. He didn't seem upset by what I said. He stared at me for a long moment before quietly saying that no, if everything worked out like he hoped, he wouldn't need to. He'd finally graduate. He wouldn't be playing the role of the university president's son any longer. He'd leave. He wouldn't be stuck in this cycle. If you're following the rules set up by the university, he said, you can use the pool of water to possibly bring her back. A lot of it hinges upon the strength of her will, though, and the will of whatever came back. I'm sorry, Ashley, but this one is on you. I wish I could help, but I'm at my limits. Is it the tree? He'd once said that it was trying to consume him. I thought it was a metaphor, but I thought of the swimmers crushed by its roots, of my manager entombed in the cemetery. Grayson meant it literally. The tree in time. I'm sorry I can't tell you more. I know how it works. It made me into this, but I cannot change things on my own. He shuffled to the front door. I followed, distracted as my mind raced. I wasn't considering Professor Monotone at this time. Obviously, I want to find out what he knows as a descendant of the people who put Grayson into his incarnation as the president's son. But I doubt he actually knows anything if his parents or their parents didn't talk about what they did. He might be able to find something out by rummaging in the attic, but that would take time. I needed immediate results. He opened the door, and someone was on the other side, and they came lunging through it, slamming into Grayson and throwing him bodily to the ground. He hit with a huff, like a balloon deflating, and he did not try to get up. He didn't even try to fight back. He just lay there, gasping, as James, wrapped his hand around Grayson's neck. Grayson cried out a strangled, agonized cry. His eyes rolled back in his head and his back arched. He whimpered back in the throat, and I saw a crushing darkness pressing in all around me like the entirety of the world was wrapping me in its hands and squeezing tight. And when it spread them again, I would be scattered as atoms into that ocean, and I would lose everything I once was. The fear was overwhelming. I couldn't go back to that. I couldn't. I gasped, surfacing from that darkness like I'd been drowning, sucking air into my lungs as if I hadn't been able to breathe for a long, long time. On the ground, Grayson stared up at me with his dying, blackened eyes. I saw the fear I felt echoing in them. His fear. It was his fear. I don't know if I should have done what I did next. If it was the right thing to do. I think maybe it wasn't. But that terror was squeezing in my chest, and I heard the distant roaring of water in my ears, and I had to do whatever I could to make it stop. I tackled James off of Grayson. We went over in a tumble of limbs and bruised elbows, slamming against the wall of the hallway. Get out! I shrieked, stumbling to my feet. Get out! James was picking himself up too, disoriented by being attacked. He clearly did not expect to be interrupted. His gaze cast over to where Grayson lay, curled on his side with his head in his arms, and James stretched out a hand towards him. I put myself between the two. Out! I screamed again. There was no logic anymore. No reasoning. I felt like I was a bundle of raw emotion, of pain and terror and loss, and I didn't know what was right or wrong anymore. That's its dash. Out! I slammed my palms against his chest. He seemed bewildered by my resistance and stumbled backwards towards the door. Maybe it was easier because he looked like Maria, because I feel comfortable with her and I wasn't scared of her, but also it wasn't her, and that made me angry. but I chased him out of the house. He didn't seem willing to fight directly with me. I stepped out onto the front porch and pulled the door shut behind me. You don't know what he is, James began to say. I know what he is, I snapped. And I know what you are. He froze, stood there as if he were made of stone. Then he sucked in a hard, shaking breath and quietly said that it's been a long time since he was called that. Or at least, he thought it was a long time. He didn't remember much. It was like waking up from a dream, he said. No, a nightmare. That's my body, he said, pointing toward the house. That thing took it. I know. I sucked in breath, trying to calm my racing heart. I know, but I don't think he's entirely to blame. He's trapped in this as well. I don't care. He said it so flatly that it was like a slap in the face. I reeled at the sharpness, at the utter lack of emotion in his words. I'm sorry, he continued, but I will do anything to get out of there and get my life back. Slow breaths, even breaths. I couldn't be angry, even though that was my friend's voice he was speaking through, even though he took her life, even though he was sacrificing her. He was talking to me. That was good. I wanted to punch him. I wanted to hit him and not stop. And then what? I asked. What happens to Maria once you're back where you belong? He hesitated. His gaze slid sideways and down, careful to avoid my eyes. It was easier to see him like this, no longer pretending to be someone he wasn't. There was a feral, hunted look in his face, and his shoulders were pulled in tight, his back hunched as if that could protect him from the world. I hated seeing it on Maria's frame. And for a moment, even though I had never met James in a way where I could form an opinion of him, I hated him. For only a moment. I don't know, he whispered. Maybe you can take this body and just put her back. I really don't know. I was just so desperate. That's all I remember feeling. Like I was losing myself every day, and I knew, the only thing I knew, was that I was running out of time. He shuddered and turned his head away from me. His eyes darted sideways, covertly glancing at the front door of Grayson's house. I'm still running out of time. He needed his body back, and soon, before he lost his hold on this world entirely, and before his body with its inhuman occupant finished rotting away like the president had. Grayson was also running out of time. I don't know what to do, I whispered. I have to lose someone, don't I? James took a deep breath and ran his hand through his hair, then paused and stared at his hand in some confusion as he reached the base of his neck and hadn't run out of hair yet. He shook it free, irritably tucking it behind an ear to get it out of the way. I briefly considered telling him about ponytail holders, but thought, nah, let him figure it out. He was the interloper here. Maria's long hair was his problem to deal with. I can hold on for a little while longer, he said. I don't remember hardly anything, but I feel like I remember you. You try to help me. If you can think of a solution before then, great, I'll go along with it. But if you can't, then I'm getting my life back. I'm sorry. Jay just promised me one thing. I said, each word feeling like I was spitting up glass. If I can't fix this, we take Grayson to the basement and you make the switch there. So that we were right next to the pool of water. So that we could lower Maria's body into it as soon as it was empty and maybe, just maybe, give her a chance to claw her way out of that darkness. Of course. I'm sorry about your friend. I couldn't think of anything but escaping. He shuddered and hastily walked away from me, his shoulders still hunched and his fingers stuck in the pockets of Maria's jeans. Grayson had told me what I needed to do if I was playing by the rules laid down by the university. I also walked away from the house, turning in a different direction than Maria had gone. I was returning to my apartment, and I wasn't thinking straight. I wasn't thinking clearly at all. I was almost there. The turn that led to my street was up ahead when a voice stopped me cold. Looking for this? The devil asked from behind me. I spun. He stood there, twirling the stake between his fingers. He held it out towards me. Did you know? I demanded, my voice rising until it was almost a shriek. Did you know this would happen to Maria? Goodness, no, he replied hastily. I can't see the future, but you gave me the stake. He took a sharp breath and stared down at me, his normally cheerful demeanor gone. That cunning calculation was back in his eyes. This was the trickster in a rare moment of honesty, the glib mask set aside, leaving exposed the treacherous cunning. I cannot see the future. He enunciated each word carefully and firmly. It made me pause, made me catch my breath, and stop my panic for enough heartbeats to catch the importance of what he was saying. The stake may be unrelated to what happened to Maria. The choice of what to do with it remains solely mine to make. Then what do? I whispered. How can I save her? Can you save her? Is it a bargain I can make? I can't save her, but we can talk. I can advise. Oh, I should have known better. I should have known. Trickster or devil, it didn't matter. There was always a trap, and merely talking was the crack their poison slipped through. But I was desperate and scared, and he was so quiet and calm, and it was everything I wanted. I laid out my options as I saw them. I could let James take his body back, and Grayson would be gone. Or I could sacrifice Maria to save Grayson. One choice meant destroying someone I considered a friend to do what was right. The other meant saving the people I cared about by doing something wrong. So I have to choose who dies, I said miserably. Maria, James, or Grayson. I hated myself for this, but Grayson was the fairest choice. He wasn't human. He didn't belong here. James had his life ripped away from him, so didn't he deserve to have it back? And Maria, wasn't that obvious? I was ready to burn the whole campus down if that was what it took to get her back. I felt sick at the thought of losing Grayson. That fear I'd felt, it ate at me. The stake, I said, it's unrelated, right? But what happens if I use it? I don't know, he replied, his voice soft. All I can promise you is this will change things. Drastically. After that, he trailed off, but I knew what was being left unsaid. What happened next would be my choice. It was always meant for humans to make that choice, to make things change. Will it change things enough that I can save everyone? I demanded. I don't know. A hint of impatience bled into his voice. His eyes were narrowed in annoyance. Stop delaying, he snapped. If you're going to act, then do it. I might be bad decisions incarnate, but sometimes that is what you humans need. You need to be set loose from all your reservations and fears and everything holding you back. Sometimes we have to make things worse before they can get better. I took a sharp breath. It felt like I was teetering on the edge of a precipice, and I could feel the wind at my back, the building storm that would gently usher me over the edge. One last question, I said. If the tree dies, will it hurt campus? Will it hurt the administration? This time he laughed softly, wryly. A hint of a smile curved the corner of his lips. I'm the devil, he said. What am I infamous for? Rebelling against the greatest authority in existence. Of course. I took the stake from him, and then I turned towards the graveyard. If my only options were to let them take one of my friends from me, then I would take everything I could from them. Third story. Elementary school horror stories. We used to tell horror stories after school in 4th grade, until the parents started complaining. Evidently, one of the other kids was going home scared. Here's the story that made her cry. Obviously, I have a bit of a larger vocabulary now than I did 8 years ago, so yeah, the girl was in college, just left home, out on her own for the first time. She was close to her parents, was sad to leave home, kissed her sister and dog goodbye out of guilt, her brother out of obligation. The university was across the state. This was up north, mine, so the fields made the miles stretch on and on. Hardly the same state, hardly the same country. Her town was small, the university was bigger, but certainly no New York, no Atlanta. She lived in a high-rise. This is important, not on the highest floor, but close. 3 or 4 down from the rooftop. It was a private school, funded by some eccentric billionaire, hence the name Eccentric Billionaire University. Most of the students lived in this single high-rise, on floors circling one on top of the other on top of the other, a fairly large plaza on the ground, a pleasant dappling light on sunny days. The air was usually alive with the sounds of chatter and the bells of elevators. The girl met her roommate, who was nice enough, and the two got on well. Their room was small, but nice, a couple of potted plants, a wardrobe, a dresser. The girl took the bed closer to the door, But that was only because the roommate had moved in first. The roommate wanted to sleep by the window. The girl wanted to sleep away from the door, but, being a good girl, said nothing. She was second. It was the roommate's right to take whichever bed she so chose, and the two got on well enough. She didn't like doors. In the fields, things could come in through doors. Winds would blow through the netting, warm, stale air would make the wooden baseboards swell, and it would sound, to a little girl clutching her dog, like footsteps. Classes began in the fall, and, knowing full well why she was at university, the girl avoided parties and men. Perhaps this was out of fear. After all, she'd had little experience with such things. But that is unimportant. What is important is how she treated her education. She valued it, sacrificed time and reputation for it. She heard the whispers of the students. What an odd girl. So strange, but was accustomed to being shouted at, so the softness didn't affect her so much. She was a favorite of her professors, always the first to be called on, hand raised or not. It was the beginning of October, and the girl had an important exam in a few days. It would constitute a large part of her grade in a particular class, and so, habits forming as they do, she was very concerned for her grades and enslaved herself to the studies. She spent her nights chained to her textbooks on the first floor of a library, papers sprawled out across the table. She always had class in the morning and tried to be home every night by 2 in the morning. Usually her roommate was asleep and all was quiet in the high rise. The elevator bell always seemed louder at these hours than ever before, and often she cursed it, fearing consternation at waking the other students. A couple days before the exam, she studied in the library, as usual. Nearby, a young man whom she'd passed several times sat, reading furiously, not paying any particular attention to the small portable radio he had sitting on his table. It was buzzing some static-filled newscast, a report about the next county over. The girl didn't listen to the radio report, only noting the white noise. She asked the young man to shut it off. "Please, I'm just trying to study," and understanding he obliged. She checked her watch. Some time had passed. It was 2 in the morning, and yet she didn't quite feel right. Usually she retired with a sense of satisfaction, but didn't a couple days before the exam warrant extra study time? A break would be healthy, though, some fresh air, and besides, she's left one of her books on her dresser anyway. Studying every topic was important, and she'd focused far too much on the reading already. She gathered her things and left. She said goodbye to the young man. Somewhere in her brain, a small thing told her that maybe no. Focus, just go and grab your book. He'll be here when you get back. Along with your book, get your book and study. Everything will work out. She passed a jogger with her dog, thinking nothing of how awfully late it was, how bizarre to see a jogger this early in the morning. All she thought of was her own dog, how she missed him. He'd be snuggling with her sister now. She'd be completely forgotten. The thought saddened her, but she was at the high rise. She pushed the door open. The air was brisk, colder than it usually was, but it was October, and winter had long set in the north. She pressed the elevator button, and it blazed orange while the vessel shot down for some high-up floor. She watched it descend down the glass tube until it settled and opened its maw. The doors closed around her like jaws and whisked her sharply up. Again it settled, and she stumbled out, nauseated. She took a breather, checked her watch. 2:20, my roommate'll be asleep. As she inserted the key, she visualized exactly where the book was so that she could hurry in and out. She wouldn't risk turning on the light. She'd have to fumble. The lock to her door clicked open, and it swung open to reveal a sleeping mound of roommate in the far bed. Even so, her hand went out of habit to light switch on the wall, just inside, but she corrected herself and lightly stepped forward. The girl tried to keep quiet. She knew better than to wake someone asleep. She flinched even at the thought. In the sticky darkness, she shuffled about her dresser until she found the book she needed, turned, and quietly closed the door behind her. All was quiet on the hall. 2:23. The girl awoke the next morning in the library, a small indentation in the Think textbook from her cheek. Her neck was sore from the odd position she'd slept in. She couldn't remember falling asleep, but figured from the odd looks of the librarians that it had been quite some time ago. Embarrassed, she looked briefly around for the young man. She was grateful that he was nowhere to be found, but thought of the rumors that might be spread and, ashamed, quickly packed away her books. She slung her book bag over her shoulder on her way out of the library, keeping her eyes fixed on the carpet. She came to the high rise, only to find it surrounded by cop cars, emergency vehicles, newscasters. A small crowd of students had gathered. What happened? I heard, she told me. I wonder. The girl passed a newswoman, not much older than she, blonde hair and a low-cut top to reveal just enough cleavage to entice viewers. Her voice was serious, but the girl could hardly comprehend her over the growing noise. She buried her way deeper and deeper into the high rise until finally breaking through the doors. Policemen stood in groups inside the lobby, some talking to students or faculty, some talking to each other, all concerned and distressed. No one noticed the girl as she rode the elevator up as she got out on her floor. It was quiet up here, away from the evacuated crowds. Most of the doors were open, water from fresh showers tracking footprints in the carpet, shaving cream spilling over sinks and outfits yet worn lying on beds. She turned the corner to find her door solidly shut, 2 yellow strips of police tape marking a thick X over the frame. The sheriff and deputy stood by the door, the former rubbing his temples. The girl, surreal distortion obscuring her view of rationality, couldn't feel anxiety, couldn't feel a threat as she came up to her door. The deputy put his arm against her chest. You can't come in here, but she writhed away, ducking under his arm and tearing through the tape. She opened the door and screamed. On the far bed, her roommate lay disemboweled, her organs pulsating over her sheets, glistening and stinking through the morning light coming in through the window. Her eyes, what remained, were open, her throat slashed. She was nude. One of her breasts was slit so that the adipose drained and pooled in the cavity that was now her stomach. Her thighs were darkly bruised and beaten, her genitalia mutilated. Her hair had been pulled out, ripped out her scalp, and littered her sheets. The girl vomited, but, wiping her mouth on her arm, looked up to find the most horrifying thing of all, that chill which made her feel as though she, too, had been disemboweled and that she, too, was being somehow stalked. There on the wall, smeared in blood, were written the words, "It's too him. Aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights?" Yes, I'm aware that it's an urban legend, but I wasn't at the time, so cut me a little artistic license, okay? I have one more, if you'd like to hear it. Let me know. Anyway, please share your childhood scary stories here. 4th story. How to survive college. I got stuck in a dryer. The truth is, I can't. I didn't get accepted anywhere else, and believe me, I sent out a lot of applications. I'm not exactly college material. I didn't even know what AP classes were until my college counselor was helping me figure out my first semester schedule. For those not in the U.S., AP classes are advanced placement classes that can count as college credit, which I guess is a thing in other high schools, but certainly not ones like mine where no one plans on going to college after graduation. Maybe after my first year I can transfer or something, but even then I kind of need the scholarship I'm on. It's either that or take on massive debt with predatory interest rates, and I just feel I'd rather take my chances than be still paying off loans when I'm in my 40s. There's no guarantee it's safer anywhere else, either. Old land is everywhere. Most people are just blissfully unaware of it. Also, sorry for not replying to comments last time. I read them all, but I was just so stressed and maybe having an emotional breakdown. But back to the matter at hand. I didn't know what to do after Chicken Tendy's last message. What I wanted to do was find Chicken Tendai and punch him in the face, but that was just an angry wish. I'm not really a confrontational person. I grew up with the more subtle art of being mad at someone. Snide remarks and the silent treatment. That sort of thing. Though I did super glue someone's locker shut in middle school once. Does that count as being confrontational? My anger at Chicken Tendai wasn't productive, though. As much as I want to stay out of the weirdness going on around here, I still felt like I was responsible for Sweater Girl's predicament. Sure, I didn't know, but I was raised around inhuman things. It doesn't mean that I'm going to be able to somehow deduce when I'm dealing with something unnatural right away. I don't feel guilty for not figuring out what the laundry lady was until it was too late. It's more that I know there's a balance to dealing with the inhuman. There's rules, broad, unspoken rules that govern interactions and the fulfillment of debt between people and unnatural things. If you're the one that causes harm to come to someone, then you must also be the one to make it right. Sometimes you're the only one that can make it right. I got my jacket and hurried from the dorm room. Cassie wouldn't be back for a while, as she had 2 classes back-to-back, and I didn't know the other girls in my dorm well enough to ask them for help. Besides, there was a much more mundane means of getting help for this situation. One that anyone would take, given my situation. I went to campus security. Their office was located in an unobtrusive 1-story building that I only knew how to find because it was attached to the on-campus grocery. It sat near the middle of campus, next to a tiny parking lot. The building was functional, and that is about all that could be said of it. Like they built it out of necessity because they had to put these miscellaneous administrative departments somewhere and didn't want to sully the main administrative building with their presence. I told the person at the front desk that someone broke into my room, and they eventually got me to a bored-looking middle-aged man that reluctantly pulled out some paperwork to fill out as I talked. I started to get the feeling that since the only crime was entering my dorm room and no real harm was done, he didn't care all that much. I wish I understood what the heck campus security is even for. At first, I figured they functioned much like the police back home did, an extra layer of bureaucracy to protect the town from real consequences, which I suppose they are, but it wasn't in the way I was hoping for. The police back home at least knew when to get Kate's family involved to sort things out. This guy just wrote some stuff down, sighed deeply, and shoved it in among the other papers on his desk with a promise to look into it. That lady is not normal. I exploded when I realized I was going to be sent on my way without a thing happening. Sure, he said. We'll take care of it. It struck me then. I was the outsider here. If they were protecting anyone, they were protecting the campus, and this time I was on the outside. I was the person they wanted to keep in the dark. I decided to clue him into the fact that I wasn't nearly as naive as the other students. Do you know anything about monsters? I asked grimly. Because I sure do. His expression went slack. It was like someone flipped the off switch in his brain. His eyes stared vacantly past me, and his jaw swung open. This wasn't an expression of disbelief or surprise. I think if I had gently prodded him, he simply would have fallen limply out of the chair. It was like a puppet's strings had been cut in front of my face, and I could only sit there, staring in shock, my heart hammering in my chest. Then his gaze cleared, and he came around with a slow roll of his head, his eyes rolling up and around before finally settling on where I sat across from him once again. He gave a long, lazy smile, and he looked at me without really seeing me. Monsters, he slurred. Oh, siree, monsters. And he giggled. Hey, are you high? I asked in disbelief. This isn't funny. There are things out there. I've seen them. His expression changed again. It snapped into a twisted anger. His brow furrowed, and his eyes narrowed tight enough to etch deep creases into his flesh. When he spoke, he spat each word while I sat there with my back pressed against the chair, unconsciously trying to put more distance between us. I felt like he would leap across the desk and snap my neck with his bare hands from the way his fingers jerked and convulsed on the desk surface. There is nothing out there, he said. Each word was barked with incredible effort, like a hook was dragging them out of his throat. His chest seemed to writhe with the effort. Nothing, he repeated. The rain is just the rain. He wasn't even looking at me, I realized. His eyes were unfocused. It was like I didn't even exist anymore. Who, then, were his words for? He kept repeating it over and over. There was nothing out there. The rain was just the rain. Bullshit, I thought. But I knew better than to say so out loud. His face was growing red. Froth formed at the corners of his lips. He began to shred the papers on his desk, his fingers curled like claws. I watched as my report that he'd dutifully written down was ripped in half, and then half again. There was nothing out there. The rain was just the rain. I slid sideways out of the chair, stumbling away from his desk. No, this couldn't be happening, no. I'd come here for help, and instead, I didn't know what was happening. The person in front of me continued to writhe, repeating his mantra over and over, caught in the throes of something he couldn't resist. I ran. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't help him, so I thought, maybe if I removed myself as the cause, it'd get better. I don't know. The person at the front desk absently bid me a good day as I rushed past them. Their words sounded vacant, as if whatever had gripped the man helping me had thrown its net across the entire office, blinding them to my distress. I fled, bursting out the front door, and then paced up and down the sidewalk once or twice, trying to catch my breath, trying to think straight. Finally, I took a deep breath and stepped back inside. The person at the front desk greeted me as if they'd never seen me before and asked how they could help. Down the hallway, I could see the man that had taken my report getting a drink from a water fountain. I stammered that I'd mistaken the door for the grocery and hurried back out. I started crying as soon as I stepped out of the building. I thought leaving my home would mean something, that everything would be different. No, that it would be better, that I'd be leaving behind the secrets and the fear. I feel so naive. This is just how our world is, and once you know what to look for, you can't go back. I sat down on the curb at the edge of the sidewalk, buried my head in my hands, and cried. There was something out there in the rain, and it didn't want to be found. Whatever it was entrenched. It had taken over campus security, a student's first recourse for assistance. What else did it have a hold over? I felt so scared and helpless. There was no old sheriff here to help me. No list of rules. It was just me. Hey, someone said from a few feet away. You okay? I looked up, and through my tears, I saw a man that looked vaguely familiar. Have we met? I asked. I think so. At the graveyard? You were with your mom? It was the student that warned me about the rain. I saw you walk out from campus security, he said awkwardly. They can be pretty useless. Do you want to go to the town police? No, it's nothing they'll care about. I stood, hastily wiping at my tears with the back of my hand. Someone broke into my room and went through my things. They didn't take anything, but it's just crossing a line, you know? It's really something I should handle myself. I think I know what I need to do. I just don't want to do it. I glanced off towards the direction of Sweater Girl's dorm. If I went there and tried to help Sweater Girl directly, what then? Would Laundry Lady's earlier goodwill be revoked? How could I hope to deal with something inhuman when I didn't know what it was? I had no weapons, no protection, and no knowledge. This was the kind of thing that got people carted out of the campground in body bags. My throat was tight with fear. Would it help if I walked with you? The student offered. I'm going in that direction. And I agreed. I thought I was crazy for doing so. Who stumbles across someone having an emotional breakdown and offers to keep them company just like that? Or am I just being too cynical? But it did make me feel more normal walking across campus with someone else keeping up a conversation about boring, mundane things. He told me about how campus security arrested a bunch of students having a Nerf gun war a few years back and charged them with inciting panic. Useless, he laughed. All of them. Then we were at Sweater Girl's dorm, and I told him I'd be fine from here. His name is Grayson, and he's a sophomore. I got his Discord handle so I can contact him again. I loitered around the lobby until I could get into the dorm floors through the ancient practice of following closely behind someone else. Easy enough. Sweater Girl's hallway was empty. I could hear music faintly coming through the doors of some of the rooms, so there were people around. They just weren't out of their rooms. When I reached Sweater Girl's dorm number, my stomach twisted into a guilty, horrified knot. Her door was open and her room was ransacked. All her clothing had been thrown out of her closet and dresser and shredded. A confetti of fabric scraps coated the floor. I shuffled into the room and desperately cast about, kicking the piles of ruined clothing aside, searching for any hint of what had happened to her. She wasn't answering on Discord. I'd messaged her hours ago. Sure, she could be in class, but somehow I doubted it. I desperately scanned the bookshelves and the rest of the room. Her purse was still here. A backpack hung on the back of her chair. Maybe it was her roommate's, I thought desperately, and she really was a class. But no, that backpack, I remembered it. It was the one she'd pulled the extra sweater out of. I was too late. Of course I was too late. Hadn't I delayed in my stupid hunt for more information? Hadn't I been stalling when I went to campus security? Wasn't I searching for someone else to take care of my problem for me because I was scared to do so myself? And now here I was standing in the ruins of my mistake. In panic desperation, I ran from her room, down the hall, and I burst through the doorway of the laundry room. I'm glad the hallway was empty because I can't imagine what a sight I made. Wide-eyed, frantic, running mindlessly down the corridor. I froze in the doorway. The laundry room was the exact same as the one in my dorm. Maybe this doesn't seem surprising, but my dorm and her dorm were not the same floor plan. They were quite different, actually. My dorm had 4 wings around a central area and was rather aged. The carpet was threadbare. The furniture in the common areas was probably older than I was. Sweater Girl's dorm, on the other hand, had to be only a handful of years old. The carpet was fresh, the common area was sleek and modern, and the floor plan was an elongated L. I expected the laundry room to be modern too. New appliances, linoleum that wasn't so scuffed and worn, or, at the very least, for it to be in a slightly different sized room. Yet when I stepped through that doorway, I was hit with a sudden sense of disorientation, like I could no longer reconcile this place I was currently in as different from the laundry room of my own dorm. The similarity was that striking. It was like a perfect replica down to the noisy, coin-operated washing machines and the stacked wall of dryers. All of them were in use except for one dryer. I walked over to it and peered inside. I didn't know quite what I was doing other than I was following my instincts. Empty. I started to turn away, disappointed. What was I expecting to find, after all? Then something caught my eye. A flash of color and a glint of reflected light. I pushed my glasses further up on my nose and took another look. A fingernail was caught on the back of the dryer. Just a fingernail, the end still bloody from where it was ripped from a hand. It shone with glittery purple nail polish. The bathrooms all require key codes to enter, so I threw up in the laundry room trash can instead. With my stomach empty, I could think a little more clearly. Part of me wanted to just walk away and pretend I didn't see anything, but then I would have to live with that resting on my conscience. Someone's daughter would just vanish with them, never finding out what happened. Sort of like how my father vanished. So, with trembling limbs, I crawled into the dryer. I plucked the nail out of the side and held it tightly in my hand, even as my stomach twisted queasily. The drum was just barely big enough to fit me, and I had to curl up, my head almost between my knees. I felt tremendously silly, but Sweater Girl had possibly been through here and I couldn't think of anything else that would take me to her. I only had to hope that whatever was going to happen would hurry up and happen before anyone came along and found me stuck in the dryer like an idiot. The door slammed shut. I shrieked in surprise and slammed my shoulder against it in panicked instinct, but the door didn't budge. Instead, the drum began to slowly rotate. It tilted, pitching me forwards, and then flipped me upside down. It did this for a few rotations, until I was dizzy and flushed from the blood rushing to my head. I slammed my elbow against the door, but it refused to budge. Something had turned it on, but it certainly didn't seem to be transporting me to wherever Sweater Girl had gone. This was just a cruel little game at my expense. And then the door popped open. I spilled out head first and rolled out onto the floor at someone's feet. "I know you're having a bad day," Grayson said from above me, "but I don't think whatever you're trying to do here is going to help." "W, what are you doing here?" "So this is my dorm," he replied as I turned myself right side up. "I'm supposed to be here. Unlike you, I think." I was trying to find passage to another reality. I coughed, raking my hair out of my face. I no longer cared what he thought of me. Apparently, anyone who was nice to me died or something. Maybe it was better if I didn't have any friends at college. I just screw it up like I was already screwing up being here. My family was right. I didn't belong here. My former classmates were right. I was the most likely to die to something inhuman. I was nothing but a massive fuck up. I didn't know you were part of the Rain Chasers Club, he said. What? Disheveled and on the verge of tears once more, I stared up at him. He had a bemused look on his face under his sandy brown hair. He extended a hand to help me up. It's an innocuous name, he said, but they're into the stories that surround the campus and specifically the Rain. He assumed that trying to find alternate realities was their latest crazy idea. Not that I think you're crazy, he said hastily. They seem to have a lot of fun chasing down rumors. I went to their meetings in my freshman year and still lurk in their private Discord channel. I'll send you an invite. And he did. Their next meeting is in a few days. I introduced myself on Discord and only said I was curious about the Rain. I'm going to be careful. After the incident with campus security, I think it's best if I listen and learn for a bit first. As for Sweater Girl, there's a glimmer of hope. A slim one. I can't confirm that she's dead. She's gone. That's different. And maybe I can find where she went and bring her back. Fifth story. My college has frequent lockdowns. This time they're not letting us out. Brynhorn College is a very small country college plopped down quite literally in the middle of nowhere. With a student body that barely exceeds 500, it's basically a speck of dust among the miles of forest surrounding it. Many of my high school friends would have balked at the notion of attending a college that's 5 miles away from the closest town. But for my quiet, country-loving demeanor, it's perfect. So when I got my acceptance letter to Brynhorn College in April, I was ecstatic. The rush of packing, course selection, finding a roommate, and obtaining financial aid was stressful as one would expect. But as soon as I set foot on campus, all of my stress melted away. I don't know what it is about this place, but everyone just seems happier here. The way people talk, the little skip in everyone's steps as they walk, the professors are all passionate. Even the food here tastes happier. Unless you come to Brynhorn College, it's hard to explain. But one thing's for certain, I had found my perfect match. As with all small colleges, however, Brynhorn College has little quirks that are also hard to explain. The main one is what we call periodic lockdown. Periodic lockdown is the kind of thing that seems ridiculous when you really think of it, but everyone is almost too afraid to joke about it because of how serious it's treated. I'd first heard about it during orientation. Until then, our orientation leaders had been all sunshine and rainbows, but a dark cloud came over their faces when periodic lockdown came up. If you can only remember one thing from orientation, remember this. Whenever a periodic lockdown occurs, it must be taken seriously and must be adhered to, said Sam, one of my orientation leaders. Her liveliness that had been there mere seconds ago was gone. What's periodic lockdown? One of my orientation group mates asked. It's a period of time, usually around an hour or two, when everyone must stay inside their dorm rooms, with the doors locked and lights turned off. Any violation of this rule will be met with instant expulsion. Myself and the other members of my group were taken aback. Part of me wondered if it was an elaborate prank to scare the freshmen. We moved on quickly from the topic. It wasn't brought up again. But on the 1st of October, a few weeks after school started, my phone buzzed during chemistry. Brynhorn emergency notifications. A periodic lockdown is scheduled on October 2nd. 2 p.m. Central Standard Time to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. You must be in your rooms at least 30 minutes before the lockdown begins. For additional preparations, please visit the school website. Other students and even the professor check their phones upon receiving the notification. First one of the school year, the professor said, before carrying on with the lecture. The freshman dorm was abuzz with nervousness, excitement, and fear about the lockdown. Our RA assured everyone of the lockdown's normalcy, but that didn't stop the rumors and theories from making their way into every conversation. I bet it's a gas leak, my roommate Theo suggested. They've been doing construction by the energy services building for the past couple weeks. They must have a lot of gas leaks then, if it's as normal as the upperclassmen say it is. The next day rolled around. I just stayed in my room the entire morning since my only class had been canceled in anticipation of the periodic lockdown. Following the school website, Theo and I did all the necessary procedures. We took out the trash, closed the blinds, locked the front door, filled our room's sink with water as an emergency water supply, and turned off all non-essential electric appliances. As it got closer and closer to 2, the hall grew quieter as people ended their conversations and doors slammed shut. As ridiculous as the whole endeavor was, no one wanted to risk being the one caught outside. Right as the clock struck 2, there was a faint, almost hollow-sounding whoosh sound that reverberated through the hall, like a spaceship powering down. It was completely dark. I checked my phone and noticed that I had neither Wi-Fi nor cellular data anymore. What the hell? They must have shut down everything, Theo complained. The show he'd been watching on Netflix was now stuck loading. Even the cell towers aren't working. It must be a regional blackout or something, I said. I turned on my phone flashlight and carried on with the assignment I'd been chipping away at. But that was the only weird thing that happened during the hour. As soon as it hit 3, everything turned back on, and school resumed as though nothing had happened. Periodic lockdowns are always a bit unsettling when they happen, but I've come to accept them as just one of those weird things that colleges sometimes do. They aren't often, maybe once or twice a month at most, and never longer than a couple hours. Occasionally a class or test is missed as a result of a lockdown, but professors were always prepared with online lecture videos and make-up testing dates. My first year of college passed by rather uneventfully, and it seemed as though the second year would be the same. Yesterday, I was eating lunch with my friends when all of our phones buzzed simultaneously. I reached into my pocket to check the notification. Brinhorn Emergency Notifications. A periodic lockdown is scheduled on November 15th, starting at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time. You must be in your rooms at least 30 minutes before the lockdown begins. For additional preparations, please visit the school website. What the fuck? That's like 40 minutes from now, my friend Natalie said, looking at her phone. There isn't an end time either. Did they make a mistake with the notification system? I asked. Screw it. I'm not taking any risks, another friend Evelyn said, putting on her backpack and picking up her tray table. I walked here in my dorm as far as fuck, so I'm gonna leave. See y'all later. The dining hall around us gradually evolved into a cacophony of people gathering their belongings and putting away their food, most of which was half-eaten. I reluctantly followed suit, still processing how weird the whole situation was. Getting back to the dorms before the 30-minute mark was out of the question by this point. So why weren't we warned sooner? I was back at the dorms with 25 minutes to spare. The halls were shuddering with the sounds of doors slamming shut, people yelling, and locks clicking into place. I entered my room and began to go through the motions that had been ingrained in my head by that point. Close the blinds, unplug my computer, the fridge, lock the door. Just then my phone buzzed again. I checked it and saw a message from my roommate Theo. Hey Brian, I got in a bike crash on my way back and the chain broke, so I might be a few minutes late. Could you leave the door unlocked so I can get in easily? Thanks. A small pit of dread grew in my stomach. What if he doesn't make in time? I wondered. Could he be expelled? Okay, but please hurry up if you can. There's like 15 minutes until the lockdown begins, I texted back. A minute later, Theo texted me again. It's all good, man. There's no way they'd punish someone after springing it up on us like that, LOL. I tried to distract myself from the gnawing pit in my stomach by studying for my chemistry quiz, which I didn't even know would happen or not. The hallway gradually got quieter, and I began to convince myself that everything would be okay. My phone buzzed again. My card isn't working for some reason. Could you come open the front door for me? The next thing I knew, it was pitch black, and a hollow whoosh echoed throughout the dorm. Periodic lockdown had begun, and my roommate was still outside. I muttered. They must have turned off the front door's card reader as part of the lockdown. What happens to Theo now? Does he just have to wait outside until the lockdown ends? I thought about leaving my room to go open the door for him. Maybe no one will notice us if he gets inside fast enough. But what if we're both caught? Why risk getting myself into trouble when I'm safe right now? Not to mention, who knows what the periodic lockdown is for? Maybe there's some kind of animal outside that could be dangerous. But then isn't Theo in danger? What if whatever's out there gets him? My head swam. I turned my phone back on and tapped my browser app, which was thankfully already open to the periodic lockdown information website. I scrolled through the FAQ section and found what I was looking for. Question: what should I do if someone else is out of their room during periodic lockdown? Answer: remain in your room no matter what and keep the door locked. If someone knocks, don't answer the door. Don't let them in. My eyes fixated on the last few words. Don't let them in. That's when the feeling in my stomach went from gnawing to nauseating. My roommate didn't make it back in time. And now I'm supposed to make sure he doesn't make it back at all. I don't even know when this will all be over. I played some games on my computer, occasionally checking the clock. 1 hour passed. Then 2. A small part of me hoped the lockdown would end by the usual time, but I should have known by now that this was an unusual lockdown. With the remaining time uncertain, I turned off my computer to save battery and sat in the darkness, thoughts consuming my brain. Even the faint slivers of light that crept from the blinds were waning. I didn't dare open them. I checked my phone. 5:16. The previous longest lockdown was less than half this time. I drank the rest of my water and went to refill it at the sink, feeling my way through the pitch-black room. Then ice shot down my veins as I remembered the last step of lockdown preparation. Something I had forgotten about in my haste star. The sink, asterisk. Praying for a miracle, I turned on the faucet. Nothing came out. Panic started to fill me. Shit, this must be why they had us fill the sink. Okay, no water. How long can a human survive without water again? Is there any water left in the pipes? I tried to get the water running multiple times to no avail. There's no way they'd keep us in lockdown long enough for us to die from thirst, right? Time marched on. Soon it was late afternoon, then evening, then night. Not that I could tell from the window anyway. It had gotten completely dark before 5. Whatever was happening defied the normal day-night cycle. At around 7, I ate one of my frozen meals from the fridge for dinner. In the absence of a working microwave, I had to leave it out on my desk for a while to thaw. Nothing like slightly below room temperature Thai noodle soup to hit the spot. I went to bed a few hours later, figuring I might as well try to skip as much time as I could, hoping I'd be woken by the lights coming back on. Instead, I woke up and knocking on the door. "Brian, can you let me in?" My blood froze. It was still completely dark, but something felt off. Like the air was a bit stuffier than normal. That was Theo's voice, I thought. There were more knocks. "Brian, my card isn't working. Can you please let me in?" Adrenaline shot through me, removing any lingering fatigue. I tapped my phone screen. 3:06. I've been in lockdown for over 14 hours. I was jolted back by more pounding. "Brian, can you let me in?" Mind racing. I turned on my phone flashlight and scanned the room to see if anything was different. The light, while initially blinding, was a welcome reprieve from the previous 12 hours of darkness. There wasn't anything unusual in the room, but that didn't shake the feeling that something had changed. I slid off my bed and began making my way to the door. I didn't have a plan for what to do. I only knew that I was terrified. The voice came again, louder now that I was closer. "Brian, my card isn't working. Can you please let me in?" I pressed an eye against the peephole. It was too dark to see anything, but for some reason I got the feeling that something was staring directly back at me. My hand wandered to the doorknob before I remembered the website. Don't let them in. I stood there for a minute, my mind racing. Is it really Theo that's standing outside? Or was something pretending to be him? "What happened to your bike yesterday?" I asked, my voice hoarse with neglect and dehydration. Silence. Part of me wondered if Theo or whoever was at the door had left, but that was quickly quelled. "Brian, can you let me in?" More pounding. The door seemed to shake more than before, the doorknob vibrating ominously in my hand. "What happened to your bike yesterday, Theo?" I asked again, louder. "Can you hear me?" More silence. Clearly, Whoever was on the other end couldn't hear me for some reason or just wasn't responding. Shook by the whole situation, I felt my way back to my bed and tried to rest. Getting more sleep was hopeless by that point. Theo was relentless, knocking at the door every couple minutes or so. Sometimes I'd get a 10-minute break. Other times there would be nonstop pounding for a minute straight or longer. But every single time the thing switched between the same two sentences, with the exact same intonation and inflection, almost like a recording played on loop. "Brian, can you let me in?" And "Brian, my card isn't working. Can you please let me in?" became etched into my brain. For all I knew, the school was stuck in hell, and I was being tormented by a demon who thought it would be funny to imitate my less fortunate roommate. I began to cry. Less than 24 hours ago, I was a normal college student, stressed out by normal college things like friendship drama and chemistry tests. Now I was stuck in the dark with no water, no roommate, and no hope of escaping anytime soon. I began to think of my family, wondering if they knew what was happening. Maybe the FBI will start investigating and rescue us all. "Brian, I've been stuck outside all night. Please open the door." I froze again. The looping of the other sentences had blended into the background, such that this new one stuck out. What does that mean? I wondered. "I'm starving and thirsty, and I'm all alone out here, Brian. Please let me in." The desperation in the voice put me on edge more than anything that had come before. I checked my phone again. 7:15 a.m. The room suddenly exploded with a flurry of knocks, so much that I could hear the door groaning from stress. "Brian, please. They're going to get me if you don't open the door right now." "Theo, what is happening?" I shouted from my bed. Silence again. My ears strained to listen. Then came Theo's voice again, quieter now, but still clear. "Dude, I wish I knew. I got stuck outside, then I somehow got in, but none of the doors are working anymore. Brian, I was literally in the hallway all night. It's so dark out here, and I think there's something out here with me." "What's out there, Theo? Are you okay?" I slid off my bed again to head to the door. "I don't know, but I'm scared," Theo shouted. Then came muffled, almost inaudible sobbing sounds. I just want this to be over. I just want to be Dash." "Theo, I'm coming," I said, my heart wrenching, my cheeks still wet with tears. But fear lingered in me. "I'll open the door, Theo. Promise. You just need to answer one question, all right?" Theo sniffled. "Okay, what's the question? What happened to your bike yesterday?" Silence again, and more of it this time. I stood by the door, heart beating out of my chest, as the minutes ticked by. 5 minutes, then 10. This is the longest it's been quiet so far, I thought. Why is Theo taking so long to respond? Then, just as I was about to retreat to bed, "Can you please just open the door, Brian?" "Answer the question, Theo," I said, my voice shaking. "Please let me in." Theo's voice sounded almost robotic now. I began to back away. "You're not Theo. You can't remember what happened to him." I was on the verge of tears again. There was pounding on the door. "Please. Brian, please. I can't stay out here." I went back to my bed and stuck my head under the pillow, hoping to drown out the sounds. There was more pounding, and even through the pillow, I could hear the muffled "please, Brian, please" on repeat. That's not Theo. It can't be. He'd remember, right? But then my mind wandered back to the pain and desperation in his voice. It felt so real. Clearly, whatever was imitating him knew how to act. I must have fallen asleep eventually because the next thing I knew, it was quiet and noon. Time clearly worked differently now. However, because my window was still completely dark, this was the time that I truly began to fear for my life. Lockdown had now been going on for a full day, and there was no sign of it stopping anytime soon. I'll be dead in 2 days if I don't find something to drink. I try to think of ideas, a slight headache starting to set in from dehydration. I felt my way around the room, not daring to use my phone flashlight anymore. I reached under Theo's bed and felt something smooth and metallic. I nearly cried from joy when I realized what I had found, a full soda can. I felt around more and counted 2, 3, for cans of Pepsi Max soda. Thank God for Theo's sugar addiction, I said to myself. The soda might be enough to get me through an extra day or two, but beyond that I know I will have to think of something to get myself out of here. And so I'm doing the only thing I could think of. I'm turning to the internet. Even though there is no Wi-Fi or cell service, I hope that somehow, some way, my story will get out and I will be rescued. And if you're reading this, that means it did. But there's one more thing before I'm all caught up. While I was writing this story, Theo came back again. I was hunched at my desk, typing away. My computer brightness turned to a minimum to save energy when there was a knock. "Brian?" came Theo's voice. I shot through my veins. I shouldn't say anything. He's going to try to manipulate me to open the door. I tried to focus on typing, but found it hard to do so. More knocking. "Brian, please, I know you're scared. I'm sorry if I scared you, all right?" I didn't move or speak. My vision blurred from adrenaline. "Listen, Brian, I don't know what's happening. It's like my memory got wiped, or I don't know. But I really don't want to stay out here, please." More silence. I typed a few more words, but found that I couldn't think of more. "There's something out here. I don't know where it is right now, but I hear it going from room to room sometimes, knocking on the door. It pretends to be other people like me. I've heard it talk with my voice." My ears perked. Could that really be Theo? Could he be different from what was at the door earlier? I found a pack of water bottles, thankfully. It should be enough for a few days. "Please, Brian, I don't want to hide from that thing anymore." "What happened to your bike yesterday?" I asked again. "Brian, I told you, something happened to my memory. It's like I can't remember anything specific from before the lockdown. Please, Brian, you need to trust me." My heart was wrenched. Never had his voice sounded as human as it did now. What if that really was Theo out there? And I had left him to fend for himself the past day and a half. The rule of not opening my door dwelled on me. But what if I actually had the chance to protect Theo? I don't know. Listen, the thing's going to come back any moment now, and I'm going to have to leave. Just please. I know it's scary. Tears pooled up in my eyes. As much as I wanted to open the door, I had to maximize my chances. "I'm sorry, Theo, I can't." Silence again. I expected the Theo thing to start repeating its lines again, but there was nothing. And then finally, a faint, almost inaudible, "All right." Ever since then, I haven't heard from Theo. But I know that he will likely be back and try to get me to open the door again. If it actually was Theo outside, part of me doesn't want to know, because the pain of the guilt would be too much to bear. At the time this is being sent, it is currently November 16th, 2022, 7:19 Central Standard Time. I will likely have 3 more days. If you're reading this before then, there may still be a chance. Please do what you can to end the periodic lockdown at Bryn Horn College. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Till the end, subscribe to Horror in Detail for more videos. Drop your suggestions in comment section.